Sherlock Holmes and Sweet F.A. Sherlock Holmes was filling in his football coupon when his friend Dr. Watson came round. As usual, Watson was flapping. On this occasion he was flapping the menu from the Football Association's annual bun fight, which he had just attended. The starter had been Scarborough fare. It consisted of parsley, sage and rosemary. But Watson felt that something was missing. "You should have asked for extra time," said Holmes. "What was the main course?" Watson replied that it was a pheasant sliced along the middle. "Game of two halves," said Holmes. "And the dessert?" "Sweet F.A.," said Watson. "In fact, the most notable thing about the dinner was that the courses were announced by the crow of a cock that the F.A. employs for the purpose." "A professional fowl," said Holmes. Just then there was a knock at the door. "That will be Lestrade," said Holmes. "How did you deduce that?" asked Watson. "Well," said Holmes, "it was partly the unmistakable aroma of partially baked apple crumble drifting up the stairs, and partly it was the sound of conspiratorial laughter coming from the street below. But mainly it's the distinctive knock of a man who has spent years with a Metropolitan Police notebook in one hand and his pencil in the other. Sure enough, when he opened the door it was to reveal Lestrade. A nearby housing estate had been named after him, and he was exploring every avenue, when he received the disquieting news that the England football team had been kidnapped, and a ransom of £1,000 per player was being demanded for their return. £1,000 for someone with nothing better to do than kick around an inflated pig's bladder?" exclaimed Watson. "Why, that's more than most people earn in a year." "But," said Holmes, "think of the ramifications if the first team is unavailable for the match against Germany this coming Saturday." Watson thought of the ramifications and paled. "A reserve team will have to be fielded, resulting in almost certain defeat. The Queen will be humiliated before the Kaiser, for, as I discovered today, both are due to attend, and each will be presented with a replica match ball signed by the players as a symbol of the undying friendship between our two countries." "Precisely," said Holmes. "Such an incident could lead to resignations, questions in the House, even an inquiry." "What sort of inquiry?" "Parliamentary, my dear Watson," said Holmes. Then he asked Lestrade how the ransom for the England players was to be paid. "Well, Mr. Holmes," Lestrade replied, "at the back of the Met there are 6 yards. They're known locally as the 6-yard area. In one of these yards there's 12 bins. One's marked rubbish, and the other 11 are marked outstanding. The ransom's to be left in the one marked rubbish." "And where will the England players be?" asked Holmes. "In the ones marked outstanding," replied Lestrade. "What atrocious marking," said Watson. "On the contrary," said Holmes, "who would think to look for an England football player in something marked outstanding? Tonight, gentlemen, we hit the back of the Met." That night, Holmes deposited the ransom in the bin marked rubbish, while Watson and Lestrade freed the England players from their unaccustomed positions marked outstanding, after which they all went for a drink and jellied eels at the Helmet and Truncheon. "This must have cost a pretty penny," said Watson, tucking into his third helping. "Complimentary, my dear Watson," said Holmes. "Thanks from a grateful nation and all that," said Watson. Holmes agreed that was doubtless the landlord's motivation, but as he lay his head on the pillow that night, he had an uncomfortable feeling that came not from a surfeit of jellied eels, but from a suspicion that the night's events were only the beginning of something decidedly more serious. When Saturday came, the stadium was packed with spectators, and the Queen and the Kaiser sat in the royal box. As the game progressed, players and spectators alike became bemused by the referee's idiosyncratic decisions, but accepted that the need to maintain balance in international relations outweighed conventional applications of the rules of football. The game ended in a narrow defeat for England. "No matter," said Watson. "It's not a question of life and death." "No," agreed Holmes, then added, "It's more important than that. The fate of the world is at stake." With a single bound he was on the pitch and running towards the royal box, where the referee was about to present the replica match balls to the Queen and the Kaiser. Sensing Holmes's approach, the referee produced from his overly capacious shorts a pistol which he levelled at him, confirming his suspicions that this was no bona fide referee, and that the kidnap and ransoming of the England players had been a ruse to deflect attention from his real plan to present match balls packed with dynamite to two of the crown heads of Europe with the express purpose of blowing them to smithereens. Holmes voiced his suspicions, which he ended by exclaiming, "The man you believe to be the referee is in fact none other than Professor Moriarty." Moments later, Lestrade reappeared. He'd received a report of strange noises coming from an empty building, but on investigation had found that there was nothing in it. He too had a pistol, and it was bigger than Moriarty's. "I arrest you in the name of the law," Lestrade told Moriarty. "On what grounds?" Moriarty demanded. "The football grounds of England." "You'll never take me alive," Moriarty sneered. "As you wish," said Lestrade, squeezing the trigger. For Professor Moriarty, it was game over. After freeing the genuine referee from the away team dressing room, where Moriarty had bound and gagged him, Holmes joined the post-match reception in the hospitality suite. To the Kaiser's enquiry regarding his reasons for suspecting the identity of the referee, his intentions and the true nature of the replica match balls, Holmes replied, "Well, Your Imperial Majesty, it was partly the unusually large number of crows nesting on the Kop, and partly the recent hike in the price of Guatemalan rubber, but mainly it was this book that I found in the referee's locker." And he held aloft a copy of Professor Moriarty's Guide to the Rules of Football and World Domination.